Dr. Kang Yuna wiped the sweat from her forehead as she checked the massive railgun one more time. The weapon stretched across the entire length of the Lunar Military Research Station Baekdu, its electromagnetic coils gleaming under the harsh lights. After 3 years of construction, today was the day they would finally test humanity's most powerful weapon. "All systems are green," called out Choi Dae-hyun from his control station. The weapons engineer had spent countless nights fine-tuning every component of the railgun they called Cheonji. The name meant heaven and earth, and Yuna thought it was perfect. This weapon could reach targets anywhere from the heavens to the earth below. Park Min-seo looked up from her communication console, pushing her black hair behind her ear. "I'm still getting signals from the alien monitoring stations. 47 different star systems are active on the quantum network. Business as usual out there." Yuna nodded. For the past 50 years, humanity had been listening to alien communications across the galaxy. They could not understand the messages, but they knew intelligent life existed beyond Earth. The signals came in patterns too complex to be natural. Scientists called it the Great Conversation, a network of alien voices that never stopped talking. "Target locked," Dae-hyun announced. The railgun pointed toward a small asteroid floating in space, 3 million kilometers away. The projectile would travel at 30% of light speed, turning the space rock into dust in seconds. Yuna took a deep breath. "This is Control Station Baekdu to all Earth Defense Force units. We are beginning the first test of Project Cheonji. All personnel should be at safe distance." Hundreds of people had worked on this project. Engineers, scientists, and military officers from every nation on Earth had contributed to building the railgun. It represented humanity's best hope of defending themselves if the aliens ever proved hostile. "Charging electromagnetic coils," Dae-hyun said. The station hummed with power as massive amounts of electricity flowed through the weapons systems. Lights dimmed throughout the facility as the railgun drew energy from the station's fusion reactor. Min-seo frowned at her console. "That's strange. I'm getting some interference on the quantum channels. Probably just electromagnetic noise from the charging sequence." "Power at 80%, Dae-hyun reported. 90%, 100%. We are ready to fire." Yuna felt her heart racing. This moment would change everything. If the railgun worked as designed, humanity would have a weapon capable of destroying any threat in the solar system. She looked around the control room at her team. These people had become her family over the past 3 years. "Fire when ready," she ordered. Dae-hyun's finger hovered over the firing button. "Firing in 3, 2, 1, firing now." The railgun discharged with a sound like thunder. The entire station shook as the projectile accelerated through the electromagnetic coils. In less than a second, a small metal slug shot out of the weapon at incredible speed, racing toward its target. Everyone watched the screens showing the projectile's path. The metal slug glowed white-hot from its acceleration, leaving a brief trail of light across space. 33 seconds later, it struck the asteroid dead center. The space rock exploded in a brilliant flash, scattering debris in all directions. The control room erupted in cheers. Engineers hugged each other and someone popped open a bottle of champagne. Yuna smiled as she watched her team celebrate. 3 years of hard work had paid off. "Perfect shot," Dae-hyun laughed. "The targeting system worked exactly as planned. The projectile hit within 2 meters of the calculated impact point." But Min-seo was not celebrating. She stared at her communication console with a confused expression. "Dr. Kang, we have a problem. I'm not receiving any signals from the alien networks." The celebration quieted as people turned to look at the communications specialist. "What do you mean?" Yuna asked. I mean, the signals are gone. All of them. Every quantum channel that was active 5 minutes ago is now completely silent. Minseo's hands moved quickly across her controls, checking every frequency and connection. The equipment is working fine, but there's nothing out there. It's like the entire galaxy just stopped talking. Yuna felt a cold chill run down her spine. That's impossible. The alien networks have been active for 50 years. They never stop transmitting. I'm running full diagnostics on all systems, Minseo replied. But I'm telling you, there's nothing. The great conversation has gone completely silent. Dae-hyun looked confused. How could firing our railgun affect alien communications? They're using quantum entanglement networks across dozens of star systems. Our electromagnetic pulse couldn't possibly reach that far. Yuna walked over to Minseo's station and looked at the displays. Every screen that should have shown alien signals was now empty. The network that had buzzed with activity for decades was dead quiet. Maybe it's just a coincidence, someone suggested. Maybe the aliens have scheduled maintenance or something. But Yuna knew better. In 50 years of monitoring the alien, signals had never stopped, not even for a few minutes. Something was very wrong. Contact Earth Command immediately, she ordered. Tell them we need every radio telescope and quantum receiver online. I want confirmation that this silence is happening everywhere, not just here. Over the next hour, reports came in from observation stations around the solar system. Every facility that monitored alien communications reported the same thing. Total silence. The galaxy's voices had vanished at the exact moment Cheonji fired. Dr. Kang, Minseo called out. I'm getting a priority message from Earth Command. They want to know if our test could have caused some kind of interference with alien networks. Yuna stared at the railgun. The massive weapon looked innocent now, its coils powered down and cooling. But something about its firing had changed. Everything. Somehow their test had affected alien civilizations across the galaxy. Get me Dr. Nam Hyungbin at the Xenolinguistics Institute, she said. If anyone can figure out what happened to the alien signals, it's him. As her team worked to establish communication with Earth, Yuna walked to the observation deck. Through the transparent aluminum windows, she could see the stars scattered across space. Somewhere out there, alien civilizations existed among those distant suns. But for the first time in 50 years, they were not talking. The silence felt heavy and wrong. Yuna had grown up listening to reports about the Great Conversation. The alien signals had been a constant reminder that humanity was not alone in the universe. Now that reminder was gone, she thought about the railgun test. Everything had worked perfectly. The projectile had hit its target exactly as calculated. But somehow, in that moment of triumph, they had broken something much larger than a space rock. Dr. Kang, Dae-hyun approached her. Earth Command wants us to prepare a full report on the test. They're calling an emergency meeting of the Global Defense Council. Yuna nodded, but kept looking at the stars. Do you think we hurt them? The aliens, I mean. Do you think firing Cheonji somehow damaged their communication networks? Dae-hyun was quiet for a moment. I don't know. But if it did, we need to figure out how to fix it. The celebration was over. What should have been humanity's greatest triumph had become their most troubling mystery. Somewhere in the galaxy, aliens who had been talking for thousands of years had suddenly fallen silent, and it had happened the moment humanity fired its first railgun. On the crystal world of Ashkor Prime, the Harmonic Council felt the silence hit them like a physical blow. For 10,000 years, Their crystalline minds had sung together in perfect unity, their thoughts flowing like music across their entire planet. Elder Vesthara tried to reach out with her consciousness, seeking the familiar warmth of her people's shared thoughts, but found only emptiness. Around her, other council members began to panic, their crystal bodies, normally glowing with the soft light of mental connection, flickered and dimmed. For the first time in their species' recorded history, each ash core was truly alone in their own mind. "What has happened to the song?" one elder cried out, his crystal form flashing red with distress. But no answer came through the mental link that had always been there. They would have to use their rarely used vocal cords to speak aloud. 12 light-years away, in the vast bioships of the Velthari Empire, Queen Mind Zarthes felt her connection to her billion children suddenly snap. The Velthari were a hive species, their thoughts guided by queens who coordinated their actions across entire star systems. Without the mental link, worker drones stopped in the middle of their tasks, confused and directionless. Panic spread through the bioships as individual Velthari experienced independent thought for the first time. Some ran in circles, others huddled together, making chittering sounds they had never needed to use before. The great empire that had expanded across 15 star systems in perfect coordination was suddenly a scattered collection of confused individuals. On Earth, Dr. Nam Hyungbin sat in his office at the Xenolinguistics Institute, staring at screens full of data. As the world's leading expert on alien communications, he had spent 20 years studying the patterns in the Great Conversation. Now those patterns were gone. "Chaewon, look at this," he called to his colleague, Dr. Lim Chaewon, who worked in the office next door. The xenobiologist came over carrying a cup of coffee and looking as tired as Hyungbin felt. "Still nothing?" she asked, settling into a chair beside his desk. "Worse than nothing. I've been analyzing the last transmissions before the silence, and I'm seeing something disturbing." Hyungbin pointed to a graph on his computer screen. These weren't just communications, they were neural patterns. Chaewon leaned forward, studying the data. "Neural patterns? You mean the aliens were sharing thoughts directly?" "More than that. I think they were sharing consciousness itself. Look at these synchronization markers." He highlighted several points on the graph. "The timing is too perfect for separate individuals. It's like the entire galaxy was operating as one giant brain." The implications hit them both at the same time. If the alien signals were actually shared consciousness, then the silence meant something much worse than lost communications. It meant billions of minds had been suddenly cut off from each other. "How many species do we estimate were connected?" Chaewon asked quietly. Hyungbin pulled up another file. Based on signal analysis, at least 300 different civilization types across 200 star systems. That's trillions of individual beings who just lost their connection to each other. They sat in silence, thinking about the magnitude of what had happened. Somewhere out there, ancient civilizations that had shared thoughts for millennia were experiencing isolation for the first time. Meanwhile, on the gaseous world of Mordun, war leader Grektar felt something he had not experienced in centuries. Pure, unfiltered rage. The Mordun were a warrior species, but for thousands of years, their aggressive impulses had been tempered by the calming influence of the galactic mind link. Connected to peaceful species like the Ash Core, even the most violent Mordun had learned to control their warlike nature. But now the link was gone. Grektar looked at his claws and felt the old bloodlust returning. Around him, otherworldly. Warriors were having similar reactions. The mental restraints that had kept their species peaceful were dissolving. On the water world of Tidal, the flowing ones struggled with a different problem. Their species had evolved as a collective consciousness, their individual bodies merging and separating like drops of water. Without the mental link that helped coordinate their physical forms, many flowing ones found themselves unable to maintain coherent shapes. Dr. Shin Yunbi worked frantically in her laboratory on Luna Station, trying to understand how the Railgun test could have affected alien minds across the galaxy. As Earth's leading expert on electromagnetic fields and consciousness, she was one of the few people who might be able to explain what had happened. The Railgun generated a unique electromagnetic signature, she explained to her assistant over a video call. But the field should have been localized to our solar system. There's no way it could have reached other star systems fast enough to cause simultaneous effects. But as she studied the data from the test, Yunbi began to see a pattern. The electromagnetic pulse from the Railgun had not traveled through normal space. Instead, it had somehow propagated through the same quantum channels the aliens used for their mental communications. It's like the alien network was a highway, she muttered to herself, and our electromagnetic pulse was a traffic accident that blocked the entire road. Back on Ashkor Prime, Elder Vesithara made a decision that would have been impossible when her mind was connected to the Harmonic Council. For the first time in her long life, she would act alone. Using the crude vocal cords that her species had evolved but rarely used, she ordered her people to prepare their fastest ships. "We must find the source of the silence," she announced, to the confused crystalline beings around her. "Our people across the galaxy need the song restored, and we will not rest until we understand what broke it." Similar decisions were being made across the galaxy. Species that had relied on instant mental communication for thousands of years now faced the terrifying prospect of physical travel to other worlds. Ships that had been designed for short trips within star systems were hastily modified for longer journeys. Dr. Hyungbin received the first reports of alien ship movements from Earth's deep space monitoring stations. "They're mobilizing," he told Chaewon. "Every species we can detect is launching ships toward nearby star systems." "Looking for answers," Chaewon replied, "just like we are." But they both knew that the answers lay on Earth. The timing was too perfect to be coincidence. Humanity's first Railgun test had somehow broken the galaxy's ancient communication network. The question was whether they could figure out how to fix it before the silence destroyed alien civilization. In the quantum labs beneath Geneva, teams of scientists worked around the clock to analyze the Railgun's effects. They knew that billions of alien minds were suffering in isolation, cut off from connections they had relied on for millennia. Time was running out. Across the galaxy, panic was spreading as species struggled to cope with their sudden isolation. Some, like the peaceful Ashkor, were adapting slowly. Others, like the warlike Mordun, were reverting to their most primitive instincts. And at the center of it all was Earth, the small blue world whose first test of a new weapon had accidentally silenced the stars. Humanity now faced a choice: find a way to restore what they had broken, or watch as galactic civilization collapsed into chaos and war. The Great Conversation had become the Great Silence, and only time would tell if it could ever be restored. Captain Lee Jiho stood on the bridge of the Earth Defense Force flagship Hwarang, watching the massive alien ship drift at the edge of the solar system. 3 months had passed since the Great Silence began, and this was the first alien vessel to approach Earth. The ship was unlike anything in human databases, its crystalline hull reflecting starlight in patterns that hurt to look at directly. Distance holding at 50 million kilometers, reported Lieutenant Commander Kim So-young from her station. They've been broadcasting the same signal for 6 hours now. Ji-ho nodded, keeping his eyes on the main screen. The alien transmission was crude by galactic standards, using simple radio waves instead of the quantum channels that had gone silent months ago. But what made it truly remarkable was that it was in broken Korean, English, and Mandarin. "Play the message again," Ji-ho ordered. The bridge speakers crackled with static. Then a voice unlike anything human spoke haltingly. "Earth, humans, we come. Peace, need, help. Your weapon broke. Voice of stars, galaxy, dying. Without unity. Please, respond." Dr. Bei Minji, the ship's xenolinguist, looked up from her translation console. "Captain, I've analyzed the speech patterns. This being learned our languages from broadcast intercepts, but they're struggling with basic pronunciation. I think they've never used vocal cords before." "Never used vocal cords?" Ji-ho asked. "How is that possible?" "If they communicated purely through mental links, they might have evolved past the need for speech," Minji explained. "Imagine if humans suddenly lost the ability to speak and had to communicate using only hand gestures we'd never needed before." Chief Science Officer Park Dong-hwan approached the captain's chair. "Sir, the alien ship is massive. Our scans show it's at least 10 kilometers long, but most of it appears to be empty space filled with some kind of crystalline matrix. No traditional life support systems that we can identify." Ji-ho considered their options. First contact protocols existed, but no one had planned for aliens who came seeking help rather than conquest. The fact that they blamed humanity's railgun for something called the Voice of Stars made this even more complicated. "Open a channel," Ji-ho decided. "Let's see if we can talk to them." The communication link established, and the main screen flickered to show the interior of the alien ship. What appeared was so alien that several bridge crew members gasped. The being looked like a living crystal formation, roughly humanoid but completely transparent. Light pulsed through its body in patterns that might have been emotions. Elder Vesthara of Ashkor," the being said slowly, each word clearly difficult to produce. "I speak for crystal harmony that was." Ji-ho stepped forward. "I am Captain Lee Ji-ho of Earth. We're sorry if our weapon caused problems. We didn't know about the Voice of Stars." The crystal being's light patterns shifted to what might have been relief. "You not know your people not connected to great song?" Dr. Minji moved to Ji-ho's side. "Elder Vesithara, humans communicate differently. We use sound waves and electronic signals. We've never had mental connections like yours." The alien was quiet for a long moment, lights pulsing slowly through its crystal body. When it spoke again, its voice carried what sounded like amazement. "You exist alone, each mind separate? How do you not go mad?" The question hung in the air. How could they explain to a being that had shared consciousness for thousands of years that humans had always been individuals? That loneliness and independence were natural states for them? "We're social," Ji-ho said carefully. "We form groups, families, nations. But yes, our minds are separate. Incredible, Vestara said. Your species evolved different path, while galaxy grew together. You grew apart, yet stayed sane. Commander Ryu Hanul, the ship's tactical officer, leaned forward. Elder, you said the galaxy is dying. What did you mean? The crystal being's lights dimmed. Without voice of stars, species cannot coordinate. Velthari, empire, fragments, war clans of Mordun wake from peace dreams, flowing, ones lose shape. Many civilizations collapse without shared mind. The bridge crew exchanged worried glances. They were learning that their railgun test had done far more damage than anyone had imagined. 300 species connected, Vesithara continued, all now alone for first time in 10,000 years. Some adapt, many do not. Fear spreads, wars begin. Dr. Minji stepped closer to the screen. Elder, how exactly did our railgun break the voice of stars? We're trying to understand what happened. Your weapon made new kind of noise, the alien explained. Electromagnetic pattern that travels through quantum channels, like poison in water supply, made mental connections impossible. Chief Engineer Kwon Jae-hyung looked up from his console. Captain, if their quantum network carried both communications and this electromagnetic interference, that explains the instantaneous effect across the galaxy. The pulse didn't travel through normal space. Can it be fixed? Jiho asked. Directly. Vesithara's lights flickered uncertainly. Unknown. Your people. Only ones in galaxy. With separate minds. Only ones with technology instead of telepathy. Maybe only ones who can help. The weight of that statement settled over the Yao bridge. Humanity, the newest and most primitive species in the galaxy, might be the only hope for restoring galactic civilization. We'll try to help, Jiho promised, but we'll need to understand more about how the voice of stars worked. Bring your scientists to my ship, Vesithara offered. I will share what knowledge remains, but hurry. Already, war fleets of Morden move toward peaceful worlds without great song to calm them. They return to old ways. Over the next several hours, a small team from the Hwarang transferred to the alien vessel. Dr. Minji, Dr. Dongwan, and Chief Engineer Kwon found themselves inside a ship that was more like a living crystal cave. The walls pulsed with faint light, and the air itself seemed to carry traces of mental energy that made their heads tingle. Vesithara led them to what might have been a library, though instead of books, the room contained thousands of crystal formations that glowed with stored information. Each crystal holds memory of great song, the alien explained. 10,000 years of shared thoughts and dreams. Dr. Dongwan ran his scanner over one of the crystals and gasped at the readings. Captain, These crystals contain quantum-entangled particles arranged in patterns that mirror neural networks. It's like they stored actual thoughts in physical form. The network was more than communication, Vesthara said sadly. Was unity, was peace, was growth of mind across stars. Without it, galaxy becomes dark and violent place. Dr. Minji looked around at the crystal library, each formation representing eons of shared alien experience. We'll help you restore it, Elder. Somehow we'll find a way to fix what we broke. But even as she made the promise, she wondered if it was possible. How could humanity, with their crude technology and separate minds, repair a network of consciousness that had taken thousands of years to develop? The answer would determine whether the galaxy descended into chaos and war or found a new path to unity. And it all depended on the species that had never been connected to the voice of stars, understanding how to restore it. Admiral Ko Jinwoo stood before the largest gathering of scientific minds in human history. The emergency conference room in New Geneva held representatives from every major university, research institute, and government on Earth. Video screens showed participants from lunar bases, Mars colonies, and orbital stations throughout the solar system. The situation is worse than we initially thought, Admiral Ko began, his voice heavy with the weight of responsibility. According to Elder Vesithara and other alien contacts, war has already broken out in 17 star systems. Species that lived in peace for thousands of years are now fighting because they can no longer share thoughts with each other. Dr. Kang Yuna sat in the front row, still struggling with guilt over her railgun test. Beside her, theoretical physicist Dr. Bae Tae-hoon studied holographic displays of alien neural patterns that made his head spin just looking at them. Dr. Kang, Admiral Ko continued, please explain what we've learned about the mechanism of the interference. Yuna stood, activating a three-dimensional projection above the conference table. The railgun created a unique electromagnetic signature that propagated through quantum-entangled particles used by alien minds for communication. Think of it like this. Imagine every alien brain in the galaxy was connected by invisible threads. Our electromagnetic pulse traveled along those threads and created static that made communication impossible. Dr. Shin Yunbi raised her hand. But why doesn't the interference fade over time? Electromagnetic pulses should dissipate. That's the problem, Yuna replied. The pulse didn't just interfere with their communications. It seems to have created a resonance pattern that feeds on itself. Every time an alien tries to use their mental abilities, it generates more interference, making the problem worse. Theoretical physicist Dr. Bae Tae-hoon activated his own display. I've been working with the alien data crystals, and I've discovered something remarkable. The voice of stars wasn't just communication. It was a galaxy-spanning consciousness that included every member of 300 different species. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Dr. Nam Hyung-bin, the xenolinguist, spoke first. You're saying 300 species shared a single group mind? More complex than that, Tae-hoon explained. Individual minds remained separate, but connected. Like instruments in an orchestra, each playing their own part but creating harmony together. The network allowed them to share emotions, knowledge, and even sensory experiences across vast distances. Dr. Lim Chae-won leaned forward in her chair. That explains why the Velthari Empire collapsed so quickly. Their queen minds couldn't coordinate. They're workers without the network. And why the Morden started fighting, they lost the calming influence of peaceful species. Admiral Ko nodded grimly. Which brings us to the urgent question, can we fix this? Dr. Shin, you've been studying the electromagnetic effects. Is there a way to reverse the interference? Dr. Shin Yunbi stood, her expression troubled. I've identified the resonance frequency that's causing the static. In theory, we could generate a counter frequency to cancel it out. But there's a problem. She activated her own holographic display, showing wave patterns that pulsed in complex rhythms. The interference isn't random, it's actually creating its own kind of order. The electromagnetic static is forcing alien minds to operate more like human brains, individual and independent. Dr. Huang Nari, a cybernetics expert, gasped as she realized the implications. You're saying our electromagnetic interference is making aliens more like humans? Exactly. And here's the strange part. Some species are adapting to it. The Ashkor, for example, are learning to function as individuals while still maintaining their crystal-based technology. They're becoming more creative and innovative without the group mind limiting their thoughts. Dr. Song Minwoo, a neural engineer, stood up excitedly. Wait, if the interference is forcing alien brains to work like human brains, that means we understand how their minds are functioning now. We could design a technological bridge. Admiral Ko looked intrigued. Explain. Think about it. Song continued. Humans developed technology to replace the mental connections that other species evolved naturally. We use radios, internet, quantum communications. What if we could create a hybrid system that gives aliens the benefits of both individual thought and group consciousness? Dr. Jang Sulgi, a brilliant cybernetics engineer, began pulling up her own research. I've been working on neural interface technology for the past 5 years. If we could adapt it for alien physiology, we might be able to create artificial connections between their minds. The room buzzed with excitement as scientists began to see possibilities. But Elder Vesthara, who had been listening quietly through a communication link, spoke up with concern. Your ideas, interesting, but dangerous, the crystal being said slowly. What if new connections, not same as old ones? What if we lose something important in translation? Dr. Taehoon considered this carefully. Elder, what exactly would be lost if we can't restore the original voice of stars? Unity, Vesthara replied immediately. For 10,000 years, galaxy grew together. No wars between stars. No species trying to dominate others. All minds connected in peace. Dr. Chaewon frowned. But didn't that unity also prevent growth? If everyone shared the same thoughts, how could new ideas develop? There was a long pause before Vesithara answered. Truth, you speak. Great song brought peace, but also stagnation. Same thoughts, shared by all meant few. New thoughts created. Galaxy was stable, but not growing. This revelation changed everything. Dr. Yunbi looked at her data with new understanding. So, the interference didn't just break their communication system. It broke a system that was holding back galactic evolution. But now we have wars starting. Admiral Ko pointed out. Without some kind of connection between species, the galaxy could tear itself apart. Dr. Jang Sulgi stepped forward. What if we don't try to recreate the old system exactly? What if we build something new that allows both individual thought and voluntary connection? She activated a holographic design that showed a complex network of technological and biological interfaces. Imagine a system where each being can choose when to connect with others, what thoughts to share, and when to think independently. The best of both worlds. Dr. Song Minwoo nodded enthusiastically. We could use human neural patterns as a template. Our brains already balance individual consciousness with social connection. We just do it through language and technology instead of telepathy. Elder Vesithara's crystal form pulsed with what might have been hope. Such system, possible, choice, between unity and independence? More than possible, Dr. Jang replied. With the right technology, each species could decide how much they want to connect with others. The warlike Mordun could choose limited connections that calm their aggression without suppressing their warrior culture. The Ashkor could maintain their harmony while still allowing individual creativity. Admiral Ko looked around the room at the excited faces of Earth's greatest minds. How long would it take to develop this system? With alien cooperation and access to their technology, Dr. Jang estimated, maybe 6 months for a prototype. But we'd need to test it carefully. One mistake could make the situation worse. Dr. Kang Yuna spoke for the first time since her presentation. What about the ongoing wars? Can we do anything to stop the fighting while we develop this new system? Admiral Ko's expression grew grim. That's our next problem. The Mordun war fleets are 3 weeks away from attacking the peaceful tidal system. If we can't restore some kind of communication before then, billions of innocent beings will die. The weight of responsibility settled over the room. Humanity had accidentally broken the galaxy's ancient system of peace, and now they had to fix it before that galaxy tore itself apart. They had the knowledge and the technology, but the question remained, did they have enough time? Ambassador Yu Sang-hoon had seen many difficult negotiations in his career, but nothing had prepared him for the chaos in Luna City Conference Center. 47 different alien species filled the massive assembly hall, many meeting each other, face to face for the first time in their species' history. Without the voice of stars to mediate between them, ancient prejudices and fears were surfacing. The Velthari delegates huddled in one corner, their insect-like forms clicking nervously as they struggled to coordinate without their queen mind's guidance. Across the room, the crystal ash core flickered with rapid light patterns that seemed to indicate distress. The gaseous floating ones had managed to maintain roughly humanoid shapes, but they kept shifting and wavering as if they might lose cohesion at any moment. "Order, please!" Ambassador Yu called out through the translation system. "We are here to find a solution that benefits everyone." A massive Mordun warrior, war leader Grektar, slammed his clawed fist on his delegation's table. "Solution is simple," he growled in the rough, guttural language his species had developed for combat commands. Humans broke voice of stars. Humans fix it or face consequences. Several other species voiced agreement, their various forms of communication, creating a cacophony of sounds, lights, and chemical signals that the translation computers struggled to process. Elder Vesithara of the Ashkor pulsed with calming blue light as she spoke. "Violence will not restore what was lost. Humans offer Help! We should listen! Listen to the species that destroyed galactic peace? Hissed depth singer Moran of the Abyssal Collective, her tentacles writhing with agitation. They knew nothing of the great song, yet they silenced it with their crude weapons. Dr. Huang Nari stood at the human delegation's table, a portable holographic projector in her hands. As the lead designer of the Babel Protocol, she had spent months preparing for this moment. Delegates, if I may explain what we're proposing. The room gradually quieted as she activated the projector. A three-dimensional model appeared above. The assembly, showing a complex network of technological nodes connected by quantum links. We call it the Babel Protocol, Nari explained. It's a hybrid communication system that combines human technology with alien psychic abilities. Unlike the old Voice of Stars, this system would allow each being to choose when and how to connect with others. The hologram showed individual minds represented as glowing spheres, with connections forming and dissolving between them based on voluntary choice rather than permanent linkage. Scientist Prime Zekthul of the Geometric Convergence, a species that looked like living mathematical equations, spoke in pure mathematics that the translators rendered as, probability calculations suggest instability. Voluntary connections lack regulatory framework of previous system. That's exactly the point, Dr. Jang Sulgi added, standing beside Nari. The old system prevented conflict by suppressing individual thought. Our system promotes peace through understanding while preserving the independence that drives innovation. War leader Grektar leaned forward, his scarred face twisted in skepticism. Pretty words, but more done no truth. Without Voice of Stars to calm warrior hearts, my people remember old hunger for battle. How does human technology replace 1,000 years of peace dreams? Dr. Song Minwoo stepped forward. Because the technology can be customized for each species. For the Morden, we could create connections that provide the calming influence you need while preserving your warrior culture. You would feel the presence of peaceful species when you choose, but you wouldn't be forced into their mindset. The gaseous, floating one called Current Keeper rippled with what might have been interest. Can system help maintain form without constant mental effort? Yes, Nari replied. The neural interfaces could provide the coordination signals your people need to maintain physical cohesion while still allowing individual consciousness. But Hive Secondary Thekla of the Velthari Empire shook her head violently. Velthari require unity of purpose. Individual minds create chaos. Workers need queen guidance, or empire falls apart. The system could maintain hierarchical connections, Dr. Jang explained. Your queens could still coordinate workers through the network, but individual Velthari would have the choice to think independently when appropriate. Elder Vesthara pulsed with thoughtful golden light. Interesting, but untested. What if new system creates different problems? What if choice leads to greater isolation? Before anyone could answer, alarms began blaring throughout the conference center. Admiral Ko Jinwoo's voice came through the communication system. All delegates, we have an emergency. More Dune war fleets have accelerated their attack on the tidal system. They will reach the peaceful worlds in 72 hours. The assembly erupted in chaos. Species that had been friends for millennia now looked at the Mordun delegation with fear and anger. War leader Grektar rose to his full intimidating height. Grektar not control all war clans, he admitted grimly. Without great song to bind, warrior hearts to peace, strongest fighters follow old ways. They see Galaxy as hunting ground again. Depth singer Moran's tentacles lashed angrily. The tidal worlds harbor billions of peaceful beings. If the Morden attack them, it will trigger defensive wars across dozens of systems. Then we have no choice, Ambassador Yu declared. We must implement the Babel protocol immediately, even as a prototype. Dr. Nari looked shocked. Ambassador, we haven't finished testing. We don't know if the system will work properly or what side effects it might have. If we wait for perfect testing, entire civilizations will die, Yu replied. Can you create a basic version that might restore communication between the Morden war fleets and their home world? Dr. Jiang and Dr. Song exchanged worried glances. Theoretically, yes, Jiang said slowly. But we would need volunteers from multiple species to test the neural interfaces, and there's a risk that the first connections might fail catastrophically. Elder Vesithara's crystal form brightened with resolve. Ashkor will volunteer. If system fails, we die trying to save Galaxy. If system works, we become bridge between old ways and new war leader. Grektar surprised everyone by stepping forward. Morden warriors also volunteer. If human technology can restore peace dreams to war hearts, Grektar will be first to try. One by one, representatives from different species volunteered to test the experimental system. The Velthari offered their precise neural mapping abilities. The floating ones provided their expertise in consciousness manipulation. Even the mathematical geometric convergence agreed to help calculate optimal connection parameters. This is unprecedented, Dr. Song whispered to his colleagues. We're about to attempt the first technological merger of 47 different types of alien consciousness. Dr. Nari looked around at the assembled volunteers. Crystal beings, insectoid hive minds, gaseous entities, mathematical abstractions, and dozens of other forms of life. If this works, we'll have created something entirely new, not just a restoration of the old voice of stars, but evolution beyond it. Ambassador Yu called for a formal vote. All in favor of implementing the emergency Babel protocol? The response was overwhelming. Even species that had expressed doubts voted in favor when faced with the alternative of galactic war. Then it's decided, Yu announced. Dr. Huang Nari will lead the implementation team. We have 72 hours to create a working prototype and establish communication with the Morden war fleets. As the assembly dispersed to begin the most ambitious technological project in galactic history, Elder Vesithara approached the human delegation. Thank you for trying to fix what was broken, she said. But remember, some changes cannot be undone. Galaxy will never be same after today. Dr. Nari nodded solemnly. We know, but maybe that's not a bad thing. Maybe the galaxy needs to change. The crystal being pulsed with what might have been agreement. Perhaps silence was necessary for Galaxy to learn new song. As the teams rushed to begin work on the Babel protocol, none of them realized that they were about to discover something that would change not just alien civilization, but humanity's understanding of their own minds. The technology they were building would reveal that humans had never been as isolated as they thought. Captain C.O. Youngman watched the tactical display with growing dread as the Mordun war fleet approached the peaceful tidal system. 36 massive bioships bristling with weapons bore down on a world that had not seen conflict in over 8,000 years. The flowing ones of Tidal had no military forces, no weapons, no way to defend themselves against the returning bloodlust of the galaxy's fiercest warriors. "Time to intercept?" Youngman asked his tactical officer. 18 hours. "If we push the engines to maximum," Lieutenant Park Ji-won replied. "But, sir, we're badly outnumbered. 3 human ships against 36 Mordun battle cruisers." Youngman nodded grimly. The Earth Defense Force had sent everything they could spare, the destroyers Seoul, Busan, and Incheon, along with the experimental railgun cruiser Dokdo. But human weapons had never been tested against alien technology in actual combat. "Dr. Jang, how long until the Babel Protocol prototype is ready?" he asked. Dr. Jang Sulgi looked up from her equipment, exhaustion clear on her face. She had been working non-stop for 60 hours, trying to adapt human neural interface technology for Mordun physiology. "The basic system is functional, but we still haven't tested it on a Mordun mind. We don't know if it will work or if it might cause permanent damage." The ship's communication system crackled with an incoming message from Elder Vesthara, who was aboard the Soul as the first successful test subject for the Babel Protocol. "Captain, I can feel your crew's emotions through new connections, fear, determination, hope, all mixed together. Is this how humans always experience others?" "Not exactly, Elder," Youngman replied. "We usually can't feel each other's emotions directly. We have to guess based on words and actions." Remarkable, the crystal being pulsed with surprised light. "Such uncertainty, yet you function as crews, armies, civilizations, humans, stronger than we thought." Dr. Song Min-woo looked up from his console where he was monitoring the prototype network. "Captain, I'm getting readings from the test subjects that are unlike anything we predicted. The neural interfaces aren't just allowing communication, they're creating new types of consciousness." Before Youngman could respond, alarms blared throughout the ship. "Contact!" Lieutenant Park called out. "Mordun fleet has detected our approach. They're changing formation and accelerating toward us." On the main screen, the alien warships grew larger, their organic hulls pulsing with bioluminescent threat displays. These were vessels designed for conquest, grown rather than built, with living weapons that could adapt to enemy tactics. "Open a channel to the Mordun fleet," Youngman ordered. The screen flickered to show the bridge of the lead Mordun ship. War Leader Thokval stood before them, his scarred form even more intimidating than Grektar had been. This was a Mordun who had never experienced the calming influence of the voice of stars, a warrior from the old clans who remembered when his species had conquered star systems through pure violence. "Human ship," Thokval growled in basic galactic standard. "You block path to hunting grounds. Move or be destroyed." War Leader: "The beings on Tidal are peaceful. They pose no threat to your people," Youngman replied calmly. Thokval's laugh was a terrifying sound. Exactly why they make good. Prey. Strong feed on weak. This is way of universe without false voice of stars to corrupt warrior hearts. Dr. Jang stepped into view of the communication pickup. War leader. We have technology that can restore the peace you once knew, but in a new way. Your own war leader Grektar volunteered to test it. Grektar grows soft on moon of sky dwellers. Thokval snarled. Thokval leads true warriors now. We take what we want, as Morden did before Great Song made us weak. The communication ended abruptly. Captain Youngman turned to his weapons officer. Load railgun projectiles. Target their lead ship. Sir, Lieutenant Commander Kim Hyunwoo said nervously. Our railguns have never been tested against living ships. We don't know if they'll be effective. We're about to find out, Youngman replied. The Morden fleet opened fire first, launching biomissiles that writhed through space like angry serpents. The human ships responded with railgun volleys, their projectiles moving at tremendous speed toward the alien vessels. What happened next shocked both sides. The railgun projectiles tore through the Morden ships like they were made of paper. The aliens had designed their vessels for battles against other bioships, not for high-velocity kinetic impacts. 3 Morden cruisers were destroyed in the first exchange. But the aliens adapted quickly. Their remaining ships began moving in unpredictable patterns, using their biological nature to reshape their hulls in real time. Biomissiles split into smaller swarms that were harder to target with railguns. We're taking heavy damage to the Soul, Lieutenant Park reported. Their bioweapons are eating through our hull armor. Dr. Jang worked frantically at her console. Captain, I'm going to try something desperate. If I can establish a neural link with the Morden commanders, maybe I can reach them through the Babel protocol. Do it, Youngman ordered, even as his ship shook from another biomissile impact. Dr. Song helped Jang configure the experimental equipment. This is incredibly dangerous, he warned. Morden minds are structured completely differently from human or Ashcore consciousness. The interface could cause permanent damage to both of you. If we don't try, billions of beings on Tidal will die, Jang replied. She placed the neural interface on her head and closed her eyes. The connection hit her like a physical blow. Morden. Minds were storms of rage, hunger, and predatory instinct barely held in check by warrior discipline. But underneath the violence, she sensed something else, a deep loneliness and confusion. These beings had lost something essential when the voice of stars went silent. Through the neural link, she reached out to war leader Thokval. At first, his mind recoiled from the contact, but then she felt his surprise as he experienced human emotion for the first time. What is this? Thokval's mental voice was uncertain. You are prey, yet your mind has strength. We're not prey or predator, Jang replied through the link. We're something different. We can show you a new way to be strong. She opened her memories to him. Images of human cooperation, of building cities and starships not through domination, but through mutual effort. She showed him human soldiers who fought to protect the weak rather than to conquer them. Thokval's mind reeled from the alien concepts. Strength without conquest, victory without dominance, impossible. Not impossible, just different, Jang replied. She began to share the experiences of other species connected to the prototype Babel protocol, the Ashcore's harmony, the Velthari's coordination, the Floating One's fluid cooperation. For a moment, the Morden war leader experienced what peace felt like while still maintaining his warrior nature. The sensation was so alien to him that it caused physical disorientation. The great song was like this? He asked. Similar, but not the same. This lets you choose when to feel peace and when to feel the warrior's strength. Captain Youngman watched in amazement as the Morden fleet suddenly stopped firing. The bioships hung motionless in space, their threat displays fading to neutral patterns. "Dr. Jang, are you all right?" he asked. Jang opened her eyes, but they were filled with an unusual light. "Captain, I can feel their minds. The Morden aren't evil. They're just lost without the connections they once had. They don't know how to be strong without being violent." On the main screen, War Leader Thokval's image appeared again, but his expression had changed. The mindless rage was gone, replaced by thoughtful confusion. "Human Jang," he said slowly, "the feelings you shared, they are possible for Morden?" "With the right technology, yes," she replied. "You can be warriors and peacemakers. Strong in battle when necessary, but wise enough to choose when battle is needed." Thokval was quiet for a long moment. Around him, other Morden warriors were experiencing their own neural connections to the prototype network. Their bioships began to pulse with new patterns. Not the aggressive displays of hunting predators, but something more complex. "Thokval will try new way," the war leader finally decided. "But if human technology fails, if warrior hearts grow weak, Morden will return to old paths." "Understood," Jang replied. "But I think you'll find that true. Strength comes from choosing when to fight, not from fighting because you have no other choice." As the Morden fleet changed course away from Tidal, Captain Youngman realized that they had won something more important than a battle. They had begun to prove that the Babel protocol could work, that technology could bridge the gap between different forms of consciousness. But they had also learned something troubling. The neural connections were changing everyone who used them, including humans. Dr. Jang's eyes still held that strange light, and Captain Youngman wondered what other, unexpected effects the new system might have. Dr. Jang Sulgi stood in the center of the massive orbital platform that humanity had constructed at the edge of the solar system. Around her, thousands of quantum communication satellites prepared for launch, each one carrying a piece of the Babel protocol's technological heart. After 6 months of development and testing, they were ready to deploy the new Galactic Communication Network. "Final systems check," called out Commander Park Doha from the control center. As head of deployment operations, he had overseen the construction of relay stations throughout local space. All satellites show green across the board. Dr. Song Minwoo monitored the neural interface stations where volunteers from 47 different species waited to become the first permanent nodes in the new network. Unlike the old Voice of Stars, which had forced constant connection, the Babel protocol would allow beings to choose when and how deeply to link with others. "Dr. Jang," called Elder Vesithara, her crystal form now fitted with a human-designed neural interface that glowed with soft blue light. "The Ashcore volunteers report they can feel the network forming. It is different from the Great Song, more textured." Jang nodded, checking her own interface readings. In the months since her first connection with war leader Thokval, she had discovered that humans experienced the network differently than any other species. While aliens shared specific thoughts and emotions, Humans seem to create new patterns of consciousness entirely. Beginning deployment sequence, Commander Park announced. The first wave of satellites launched from the platform, their drives, carrying them toward predetermined positions throughout the solar system. Each satellite contained quantum processors designed to interface with both alien psychic abilities and human-style technological communication. Dr. Shin Ayunbi observed from her monitoring station, watching electromagnetic readings that still puzzled her. The interference pattern from the original Railgun test is changing, she reported. Instead of blocking alien mental connections, it's now amplifying them in some way. How is that possible? Asked Dr. Bei Tae-hoon, who had been studying the quantum mechanics of consciousness for months. I think the electromagnetic noise forced alien minds to develop new neural pathways, Yoonbi explained, like muscles that grow stronger after being damaged. Their psychic abilities are actually more powerful now than before the Great Silence. War leader Grektar, who had become an unlikely ambassador for the Mordoon species, approached the human scientists. His own neural interface was a complex device that helped balance his warrior instincts with the peaceful influences of other species. Grektar feels changes in mind patterns, he reported. Morden warriors across the galaxy respond to new connections. Old rage fades, but strength remains. Is good change. But Dr. Huang Nari looked concerned as she studied the readings from human test subjects. We're seeing unexpected effects in human volunteers. Their brain patterns are changing in ways we didn't predict. She pulled up holographic displays showing neural activity from the human participants. Look at this. When humans connect to the network, they're not just communicating with aliens. They're developing abilities we never knew they had. Captain Lee Ji-ho, who had volunteered for the human trials, stood nearby with his own interface active. His eyes held the same strange light that Dr. Jang had gained, and he moved with a fluid grace that seemed almost alien. I can feel them, he said quietly. Not just the aliens in the network, but other humans. It's like we were always meant to be connected, but something was blocking it. Dr. Song looked at the neural readings and gasped. The electromagnetic interference from our railgun didn't just disrupt alien communications. It broke through some kind of barrier in human minds. We had psychic abilities all along, but they were suppressed somehow. Suppressed by what? Dr. Jang asked. Before anyone could answer, alarms began sounding throughout the platform. Commander Park's voice came through the communication system. All stations, we have an emergency. The quantum satellites are activating ahead of schedule. The network is coming online by itself. Throughout the platform, alien volunteers began to pulse, glow, and shift as their neural interfaces connected them to the growing network. But something unexpected was happening. Instead of the calm, unified consciousness of the old voice of stars, this new network felt alive with individual voices all speaking at once. Elder Vesthara's crystal form brightened to painful intensity. The network is learning, she said, her voice filled with wonder. It takes patterns from each mind and creates new possibilities. Dr. Jang felt the connection surge through her interface, but instead of sharing simple thoughts with aliens, she found herself experiencing entirely new forms of consciousness. The network wasn't just connecting minds. It was creating hybrid intelligences that combined the best aspects of different species. Dr. Song, she called out. The human neural patterns are acting as catalysts. Our individual thinking style, is helping other species break free from their old collective limitations. Across the galaxy, the effects were immediate and dramatic. On Ashkor Prime, crystal beings who had shared the same thoughts for millennia suddenly burst with individual creativity. Each Ashkor began developing unique artistic expressions, scientific theories, and philosophical ideas. In the Velthari Empire, worker drones began to question their queen's orders for the first time, not in rebellion, but in constructive dialogue. The rigid hive structure evolved into something more flexible and innovative. Even the warlike Mordoon found that their access to peaceful alien emotions didn't weaken them. It made their warrior culture more sophisticated and strategic. But the most dramatic changes were happening to humans themselves. Dr. Jang watched in amazement as Captain Lee lifted a small object using only his thoughts, his neural interface glowing with power. The psychic abilities were always there, Dr. Shin, Yunbi realized. Humans evolved them just like other species, but something suppressed them during our development. The electromagnetic interference from our own technology finally broke through that suppression. Dr. Tae-hoon looked at the quantum readings and made a startling discovery. The barrier wasn't natural. These readings suggest that human psychic development was artificially blocked millions of years ago. By who? Commander Park asked. Unknown, Tae-hoon replied. But whatever blocked our abilities also isolated us from the Galactic Consciousness Network. We were meant to be part of the voice of stars from the beginning. Elder Vesathera pulsed with sudden understanding. That is why humans developed technology instead of telepathy. You found different path to same goal. Now, galaxy has both paths. The implications were staggering. Humanity hadn't accidentally broken the galaxy's communication system. They had completed it. The voice of stars had been missing a crucial component. The innovative, individual thinking that only isolated minds could develop. The network is stabilizing, Dr. Song reported. All species are maintaining their individual consciousnesses while sharing selected thoughts and emotions. It's like the old system, but with choice and diversity. Dr. Jang felt the new network settling into its final configuration. Instead of the monolithic unity of the Great Song, this was a symphony with each species playing its own unique part. The Ashkor provided harmony, the Velthari offered coordination, the Mordoon contributed strength, and humans added innovation and choice. Dr. Jang, Captain Lee said, his enhanced abilities allowing him to perceive the network's full scope. I can see the entire galaxy through this connection. Every world, every species, every individual mind, but they're all still themselves, just more connected. Commander Park looked at the deployment status display. All quantum satellites are online and functioning. The Babel protocol is now active throughout the galaxy. For the first time in 6 months, the galaxy was no longer silent. But instead of the uniform voice of stars, there was now a rich conversation between billions of individual minds, each contributing their unique perspective to the cosmic dialogue. Elder Vesasthara approached Dr. Jang, her crystal form pulsing with gratitude. Thank you for giving galaxy choice. Old voice was beautiful, but limited. New voice is complex and growing. Dr. Jang smiled, feeling the network's potential expanding around her. This is just the beginning. With individual creativity and collective wisdom working together, there's no limit to what the galaxy can achieve. But even as she spoke, she wondered about the mystery of humanity's suppressed abilities. Who had blocked human psychic development, and why? The answer to that question would determine whether the new network was truly safe or if greater challenges lay ahead. President Ogeon stood before the magnificent assembly hall on Proxima Station, the first permanent structure built through cooperation between all galactic species. 1 year had passed since the Babel Protocol transformed the galaxy, and today marked the founding of the true Galactic Council. Around her, representatives from 300 species gathered in a harmony that would have been impossible under the old voice of stars. The hall itself was a marvel of combined technologies. Ash-core crystal formations provided structural support while generating beautiful patterns of light. Velthari bioengineering had created living walls that filtered air and provided nutrition. Mordun metallurgy strengthened the framework, while human engineering systems coordinated everything through the Babel Protocol network. Fellow beings of the galaxy, President O began. Her words carried instantly to every connected mind, while still allowing individual interpretation. 1 year ago, humanity made a mistake that seemed to doom galactic civilization. Today we gather to celebrate how that mistake became the foundation of our greatest achievement. Elder Vesthara pulsed with warm golden light from her position among the Ash-core delegation. Through the network, she shared the memory of that first moment of silence when her species had felt truly alone for the first time in millennia. But now she could also share the joy of rediscovering individual creativity while maintaining chosen connections with others. The old voice gave us peace through uniformity, she said, her speech now much more fluent after months of practice. New voice gives us peace through understanding of differences. War leader Grektar stood with the Mordun delegation, his scarred form now decorated with symbols representing his role as a keeper of both war and peace. Mordun warriors learned that true strength comes from choosing when to fight, not from fighting without choice. Human technology gave us wisdom to match our power. Dr. Kang Yuna, now director of the Galactic Communications Research Institute, activated a holographic display showing the network's growth over the past year. The Babel Protocol has connected over 5 trillion individual minds across 300 species. But more importantly, it has allowed each of those minds to contribute their unique perspective to our shared knowledge. The display showed streams of information flowing between star systems, scientific discoveries shared instantly between species, artistic inspiration crossing the galaxy at the speed of thought, and philosophical insights that emerged from the collision of different ways of thinking. Dr. Zhang Sulgi, whose neural enhancements now allowed her to serve as a bridge between human and alien consciousness, stepped forward. We've learned that diversity and unity aren't opposites. They strengthen each other. The galaxy is now more unified than it ever was under the voice of stars, precisely because that unity respects individual differences. Captain C.O. Youngmin, whose fleet had helped stop the Mordun attack on Tidal, reported on the military implications. Conflicts still arise between species, but now they're resolved through negotiation rather than warfare. When beings can share their perspectives directly, misunderstandings become almost impossible. But the most remarkable changes had happened to humanity itself. Dr. Song Minwoo, his own psychic abilities now fully developed, explained the discovery that had shocked the scientific community. We've traced the suppression of human psychic abilities to an artificial barrier created approximately 4 million years ago. The barrier was designed to isolate humanity from the galactic consciousness network until we developed independent technological civilization. He activated another display showing Earth's prehistory. Someone or something wanted humans to evolve differently from other species. While the galaxy developed collective consciousness, we were forced to develop individual creativity and technological innovation. President O nodded gravely. The question of who created this barrier remains unanswered. But we've found evidence of similar barriers around 12 other star systems containing primitive civilizations. It appears that humanity was part of some kind of galactic experiment in consciousness development. Elder Vesithara pulsed with thoughtful blue light. Perhaps creators of barriers, new galaxy, would need different perspectives to continue growing. Voice of stars brought peace, but also stagnation. Dr. Huang Nari, whose cybernetic enhancements had evolved far beyond anything previously imagined, added her analysis. The barriers aren't gone. They're still protecting the 12 primitive species we've identified. But now we understand their purpose. They're creating a diversity of consciousness types that will enrich the galaxy's future development. The revelation had profound implications. The galaxy wasn't just a collection of species that had evolved naturally. It was a carefully designed experiment in consciousness, with each species contributing different aspects of intelligence and awareness. War leader Thakval, who had become an advocate for reformed Mordun culture, spoke through the network from his position on the frontier. Old ways taught that strong consume weak. New understanding teaches that different strengths support each other. Galaxy grows stronger when all voices heard. Commander Park Doha reported on the network's technical status. The Babel protocol now operates through 50,000 quantum relay stations. Response time between any 2 points in the galaxy is less than 30 seconds, and the system processes over 1 billion simultaneous conversations. But the most impressive statistic came from Dr. Shin Yunbi's research division. Since the network came online, we've seen a 300% increase in scientific breakthroughs, a 500% increase in artistic creativity, and complete elimination of interspecies warfare. The combination of individual innovation and collective knowledge sharing has accelerated galactic development beyond all previous rates. President O looked around the assembly hall, seeing beings who had once been strangers to each other now, working together as partners. The railgun that broke the galaxy's voice ultimately gave it a new song. But more than that, it taught us that sometimes destruction is necessary for creation. Dr. Zhang raised her hand to add a final point. We're already seeing evidence that the 12 protected species will develop their own unique consciousness types. When their barriers eventually fall, they'll add new voices to our galactic symphony. The Assembly voted unanimously to establish the Consciousness Diversity Protection Act, ensuring that future species would have the choice to develop either collectively or individually before joining the galactic community. As the session concluded, President O felt the network's presence around her like a warm embrace. Through the Babel protocol, she could sense the satisfaction of beings across the galaxy, the Ash Core creating new crystal art forms, the Velthari exploring individual expression within their hive structure, the Morden finding honor in protection. rather than conquest, but she could also sense something else, a vast intelligence that seemed to observe the galaxy's development with approval. The consciousness that had created the barriers was still watching, still guiding the experiment, in galactic awareness. "Dr. Jang," she said quietly, "do you think whoever created the barriers will eventually reveal themselves?" Jang smiled, her enhanced perception allowing her to touch the edges of that vast presence. "I think they already have. The barriers, the timing of our railgun test, even the specific way our electromagnetic pulse interacted with alien consciousness, none of it was accidental. We're still part of their experiment, but now we're conscious participants rather than unwitting subjects." The thought was both humbling and exciting. Humanity had gone from accidentally breaking galactic civilization to helping it evolve into something unprecedented. And somewhere in the network's depths, ancient minds watched with satisfaction as their long experiment in consciousness diversity finally bore fruit. As the representatives departed for their home worlds, each carrying news of the new galactic harmony, the stars themselves seemed to sing with voices both ancient and newly born. The galaxy had found its new voice, and it was more beautiful than any song it had ever sung before. The railgun that had silenced the stars had ultimately taught them to sing in harmony while celebrating the unique melody that each voice contributed to the cosmic chorus. And in research stations throughout human space, scientists continued their work on improving the Babel protocol, knowing that this was only the beginning of humanity's role in the galaxy's continuing evolution.